All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving deep into a fascinating and complex theory that's been making the rounds online. It connects something we all know, New Year's Eve, with ancient Rome and a pretty massive spiritual conspiracy. Let's get right into it. So, the whole thing kicks off by challenging a celebration that feels totally normal to us. It asks us to look past the countdowns and parties and ask ourselves, is there a hidden meaning? Maybe an ancient one? Behind the way we ring in the new year? Okay, so here's the first big claim. The idea is that our New Year's celebration isn't modern at all. Nope. In fact, it's an ancient occult ritual, and most of us are participating without having any clue about its real origins. And to frame this entire argument, the source pulls this quote from the Bible. The central idea here is that a lack of knowledge, historical and spiritual, is what leads people to unknowingly take part in practices that have origins and consequences they just don't understand. This is where it gets really intense. The video argues that New Year's Eve isn't just a party, it's presented as a spiritual gateway, and I'm quoting here, dimensional satanic dark portal. The idea is that when you celebrate, you're not just welcoming another year, you're symbolically walking through this portal and inheriting curses without even knowing. So where did this ritual supposedly come from? Well, the theory traces it all the way back to the Roman Empire. The argument is that this isn't about our modern traditions, but about some very old, very deliberate decisions. The source points to one specific year as the critical moment, 46 BC. This is when Julius Caesar reformed the Roman calendar, and the source calls this a key move on a chessboard of deception. He's the one who made January 1st the official start of the new year, and he dedicated it to a very specific god. And that god is Janus. You've probably seen him depicted before, the god with two faces. He was the Roman god of everything to do with transitions, doors, gates, beginnings, endings. So, with one face looking back at the past and one looking forward to the future, he seemed like the perfect symbolic choice to kick off a new year. But here's where the theory really digs in. The source highlights these very specific titles that were given to Janus. The claim is that these are way more than just descriptions. They were supposedly chosen very deliberately to create a powerful spiritual parallel. And you're about to see what that parallel is. Okay, this is the absolute core of the theological argument here. The theory states that Janus was set up to be a direct, demonic counterfeit of Jesus Christ, and that this happened just before Jesus was even born. So you have to ask the question, right? Why him? Of all the pagan gods, why choose Janus to start the year? The video suggests the timing was anything but an accident. The argument is that changing the calendar to glorify Janus was a strategic, spiritual move made almost in anticipation of the Messiah's arrival. And this slide right here is what the source presents as the smoking gun. It's a side-by-side comparison. Look at the titles given to Janus, the beginning and the end, the door, the way, the holder of keys. Now look at the titles that belong to Jesus Christ in the Bible. According to the source, they're a direct match, a clear usurpation of the titles that rightfully belong to Christ. It's pretty jarring when you see it laid out like that. This phrase is a theme you'll hear again and again in the source video. It's used to drive home the idea that historical events are not random at all. Instead, they're part of a meticulously planned spiritual drama, that chessboard of deception we talked about, that's been playing out for thousands of years. So how does a Roman god from over 2,000 years ago connect to our world right now? Well, the source attempts to connect what it calls the modern dots. The first dot is drawn from pop culture. The source points to the 2020 TV series Utopia, where a really sinister global project is codenamed, you guessed it, Janus. This is presented as a kind of predictive programming. You know, the idea that media is used to slip concepts into the public's mind before they actually happen. The second dot connects to real-world science. The video highlights the existence of something called Janus nanoparticles. These are actual, real particles that have two distinct faces and are used in medicine. And again, the suggestion is that the name is no coincidence. And the third dot is a government software program called Tiberius. The source connects this name directly to the Roman emperor, who was ruling right at the time of Jesus' crucifixion. And here's where that connection gets really specific. In Roman mythology, Janus had a son named Tiberius, and the famous Tiber River in Rome was named after him. The source then links this directly to the Emperor Tiberius, framing it as a direct parallel, the authority representing the son of Janus in opposition to the Son of God. So, all of this builds up to what the source material calls the grand design, the idea of a perfect demonic parallel to the divine plan, all built around a very significant number. The number 12. Of course, this number is fundamental in Christianity. It represents the 12 disciples chosen by Jesus. And then, the source immediately hits you with this parallel. There were also 12 principal Caesars of Rome. The argument being made is that just as Christ had 12 disciples to build his church, the opposing force, the dragon, raised up 12 Caesars to be its own demonic disciples. The theory really culminates with this final parallel. At the time of Jesus' birth, the ruler of Rome was Augustus Caesar, and he was officially deified, referred to as Divi Filius, which literally means son of a god. So the source presents this as a direct mirror image conflict happening on the world stage, a spiritual war between two opposing sons of God. And that's where the source material leaves us. It frames this whole narrative as a pattern that's been hidden in plain sight, and it really asks you, the viewer, to decide for yourself. Do all these connections represent an ancient blueprint for deception, or are they just a massive series of historical and modern coincidences? What do you think?